Dudes, do you think he can actually make his own George Lynch burnt guitar body? Hey guys, what's up? I wanted to show you this project that I'm working on. As you can see, it's a guitar, obviously. So what we have here is a kind of a standard Strat body. It's made out of alder. And if you're already watching this going, George Lynch, George Lynch! Yep, you got that right, guys. So this is kind of my version of a guitar that George has been making for several years now called a Burnt Tiger. And he custom makes them with his own line of guitars, which is Mr. Scary Guitars. And then there was also an ESP LTD version a few years back, a limited run. But right now, I think the only way you can get them is, if you want like a real version, is to get it from George, Mr. Scary Guitars. And they're like $6,000. Yeah. There's no way I'm ever paying $6,000 for a guitar. I mean, as cool as it would be to have a guitar and say, yeah, George Lynch made it, and here's the certificate signed by him, and all the cool stuff that would come with that. I mean, that would be awesome, but I'm just never going to pay that kind of money for a guitar. Not even close to that, ever. So I decided, okay, next best thing, I'm going to get a guitar body, and I'm going to make one myself. So what I did was I got this body from K&E Guitars. Wasn't that much money. I told them what I wanted, you know, alder routed for one humbucker and for the Floyd, top mount Floyd. And then I went to Harbor Freight and bought a 1/4-inch trim router. Now guys, I've never used a router in my life, ever. What you see on this guitar is the very first time I ever used the router. I also bought a cheap $10 Dremel type tool. Not a real Dremel, but like a copy, like a $10 one. And then other than that, it was just sandpaper and elbow grease. So what I did was I went to the body and using a pencil, I drew on the shapes. So I just drew the lines where I was going to cut with the router, and then after that I got the router bit that I wanted to use, and I just started cutting in. I think this was the first one I did right here at the top, and I just followed the line as best I could, kept going around, doing all the routes, and it was actually a lot easier than I expected it to be. I thought, you know, one little slip and I'm going to completely ruin this body, but it didn't happen. And then one thing that did happen though, guys. Okay, you see here where I drilled the hole for the volume knob, and if you look at the back, you can see there's the control cavity, right? So the control cavity means there's not a whole lot of wood from here to the top of the guitar. It's just that much that you can see in the hole right there. So what happened was, I was doing the routing on, let's see, I believe it was this part right here. And right there in that little crack, it went deeper than the control cavity. So there was two little holes right there where it went through to the control cavity. And I was like, uh-oh, oh no. So then what I did for all the routing on the lower half, you'll see it's not as deep. That little piece is, but this stuff, all these, I did it more shallow so that when I was doing this piece right here, it wouldn't have a big giant gaping hole going through to the control cavity. So the lower half's a little bit more shallow, and then the upper half, when I did this side, I did it the same depth as the other side because I didn't want it to look like totally uneven by only having one side being a little bit deeper. So the top half's a little bit deeper, bottom half a little bit more shallow. It's not really that noticeable. I don't know if anybody would even notice it if I didn't point it out. Okay, so then a whole bunch of sanding to get everything like even, and all the edges I had to like smooth, you know, round off the edges a little bit, and that was all done by hand sanding, and it was quite a bit of work. And then after that, just yesterday, I stained it, and I don't have any experience staining a body. Like a lot of things that I do, guys, I don't have experience doing it, and then I just do it for the first time and see what happens. So I got a little can of Rust-Oleum stain, and I believe the color is Kona, which is a pretty dark brown. And I just went over the entire body. I read the directions on the can, put the stain all over it, and then after a few minutes, you wipe off the excess stain, and it comes off pretty easy. And then I waited until today so that it was fairly dry, and then I went over it with some 2000 grit sandpaper to get some of the wood to kind of pop out a little bit more. And you can see in spots where the wood's kind of coming through. And I really like it because it gives it that sort of old piece of wood look, which is what I was going for. I wanted this to look like an old piece of like rustic wood. And I'm really happy with the results. I think it looks totally cool. And if you like this, guys, it's gonna go up on eBay very soon when I'm completely done with it, and I think it's safe to ship it. And the reason it's gonna go on eBay, guys, is because I have another guitar body that I'm gonna do for myself. The one I'm gonna do for myself, it's not a Strat shape, it's a soloist shape, like a Charvel or Jackson soloist. So slightly different body shape. I prefer that. I like that body style a lot more. And it's also routed for 2 humbuckers, and then instead of a Floyd, it's gonna have a hardtail. And that's just my personal preference. So now that I have a general idea of how to do it and that I can pull it off and it's gonna look pretty cool, I'm ready to do the other one that I will keep for myself. And then that one will be fully assembled into a complete guitar, and I'm sure I'll have a video on that coming up pretty soon as well. So if you wanna see that coming up, make sure you hit the subscribe button, keep checking back. I'm still working on my Eddie Van Halen tribute guitar, and I'll have a complete video for that coming up pretty soon, as well as lots of other stuff. All right, guys, see you next time.